In 2012, my grandmother suffered a major stroke resulting in hospice in her home with her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren by her side. Friends and family were able to come by freely and spend time with her. I was very close to my grandma and was lucky to be able to share much of this time with her. For anyone that has ever been through hospice with a loved one, you will understand how hard this type of thing can be. One night I was sitting at home in my office catching up on some work, and all of a sudden the room filled with a scent of perfume. I'm not talking about a faint smell, I'm saying it was very distinctive and strong throughout the entire room. I stopped everything I was doing and said out loud to myself, "Something's wrong. That's Grandma." I had not spoken to my family that day, but I felt an urgent need to send a text message to my uncle, who was staying with her at the time, to ask, "Are you guys okay?" This was at 11:20 p.m. I got a response right away saying, "You might want to come and say goodbye. It's not okay." I quickly rushed over. Upon arrival, the living room where my family was congregated was very silent and filled with blank faces. Without saying anything, I walked straight to my grandmother and kissed her on the forehead and said I loved her. She was still warm, but no longer breathing. I told my uncle that I was there because Grandma had brought me there. I asked when she passed and he replied saying 5 minutes before I sent my text. This puts the perfume in my office at nearly the exact same moment. Now I'm going to say that I was born into an Irish Catholic family, but I'm in no way a religious person. I would have been the first person to discount this type of story if you told it to me, but I must say this experience had me thinking that there really is something more out there. I felt it. So basically, me and my friend decided to go for a walk to the mountains and cross the woods on top of them. This happened in Germany, and bad to bars. So we started to ascend around 5 o'clock p.m. It was winter and it was getting dark already. As we were getting up, the sun was going down and by around 6 p.m. it was already dark. We came up and my friend had 33% on his iPhone and I had 16%. We checked Google Maps and how far is our home, and it was 1 hour away through the woods in the mountaintop. Mind you, we didn't know that the higher you get, the worse the battery works and the worse the GPS. We started walking in that direction, and I have turned on the flashlight. We came up to this weird looking hotel on top in the woods. It had a cross in the yard for some reason. It looked spooky as fuck. There were lights inside but no human around and no cars, just a weird hotel. So I thought maybe we should go back the way we came because it's really dark. I told my friend that we should just go back the way we came, and he said nah, it's cool, and we proceeded. As we went further, looking at Google Maps, it became darker and darker because Germany has a very thick forest. So at this point we're walking and the flashlight doesn't even shine that far. Like, it was so dark that basically if you would put your hand in front of your face and half of your hand you won't see. The flashlight basically went for 15 to 20 centimeters, it was super dark. And we didn't see the road at all, and we were following the Google Maps so far, and we were walking further and further into this forest and I started to get a bit nervous. Then I noticed that my percent is getting lower. Like, not 5 minutes pass and then a percent goes lower. It was literally like I take one step and 1% is down. So I walk with 14 and take a couple of steps and it's 7. I'm like, holy shit. I check Google Maps. GPS says one thing. I say to my friend, check your GPS, and guess what? His GPS is in completely the other side of the forest. It's like lagging or something. So the GPS is broke and we were walking in the wrong direction for I don't even know how long, and he has like 30% left. My phone dies and I'm like, holy shit. I say, do we call 112 or what? And then he says, nah, it's gonna be fine. So we try to find the markings or any signs, so we return to it. We tried to use GPS again, but no luck. I started to panic and just decided to run uphill, just so I could see the lights of the town. As I ran further into the darkness, I completely lost my friend. It was like a 400-meter mountain. It was very high and it was pitch black, and we can't see anything. And I started to think that there was only fucking wolves and bears in this forest. Thankfully, no, I guess. But there might be actually. So I found my friend after some screaming, and here goes the madness. We started walking towards what we thought was the right way. He used his phone to lighten up the path, and so we walk and see the sign, go and walk some more. After some time we get back to the sign, so we were just walking in circles. I don't even know how. It's like we were stuck in a loop or something. Eventually we found some marked trees for people that are lost. We went that way and had to climb some slippery rocks and some weird bridge, but we made it out. In the early 2000s, my husband and I moved our family to San Antonio, Texas for amazing job opportunities. We all fell in love with everything about Central Texas: the history, all the many family activities and fun parks like Six Flags and SeaWorlds, the shopping, the beautifully mixed cultures, frequent fiestas, the architecture of the land, the incredible food from all over the world. For myself, I love history, and I've always been interested in the paranormal, things that Central Texas has no shortage of. I even worked at one of the oldest hospitals in Texas and had many bizarre, unexplainable experiences at work, but that's not what I want to talk about this time. About 10 years ago, the UFC was coming to Austin, and my husband was beyond excited to go, so we bought tickets. He would have stayed the night in any old hotel, but he left me to make those arrangements, knowing I would pick one with a lot of history. After poring over many options, I decided on one of the oldest, loveliest hotels near downtown. It had a long, varied history: beautiful old period rooms, breakfast provided out on a lovely veranda, and a small library of local history. I made sure to reserve a room that had access to and from the courtyard since I know UFC fights could run late. Fast forward to fight night, and it wasn't until 2 a.m. till we returned to our room, excited but tired from the energy of the fights and the chaos of the crowds. We finally settled down after our little champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries and fell asleep. What felt like a short time later was my husband sound asleep, arms wrapped around me and snoring in my ear. I felt a large hand wrap around my left ankle and give me a sharp tug. Due to the Texas heat, I usually slept with my feet out above the sheets, and for a second I thought it was my husband's hand, but then it hit me that we were in a hotel, and his hands were in other places. The hand then tightened around my ankle, so my eyes flew open and I sat straight up, knocked my husband off and clutched his sheet up over my chest, and stared up in shock at a tall middle-aged man in middle 1800s clothing, with a huge salt and pepper handlebar mustache who stood there, looming over the bed glaring at me. Now, one of the reasons I was so good at my job is that I go from scared or shocked to pissed off and moving in less than 3 seconds. Finding a strange man in our room in the middle of the night staring at me, and well, something that didn't cover much, I was seriously pissed off. I threw out my hand, pointed at him, and screamed, "Get out!" The man looked shocked and then turned and quickly walked out of the French doors to the courtyard. Except when I jumped up and threw myself at the doors to lock them, I realized that they were already closed and locked. At that moment, I heard my husband start to swear, and when I turned back, I saw him sit up in bed, stare at me, stare at the doors, and then back at me. He asked, "What the hell just happened?" and reached for the phone to call security, just when someone knocked on the other side of the doors, making me nearly jump out of my skin. Moving the curtains aside with shaking hands, I saw a security guard standing there. When my husband stepped past me, unlocked and opened the doors, the guard said that he had been a few doors down and heard a scream and asked if everything was okay. My husband was wide awake at this point and demanded to know if he had seen a man walk out of our doors just a few seconds ago. The young man denied it, said he had only been a few feet away and he would have definitely seen somebody. Not knowing what to say, I slipped on my robe and told him that I must have been dreaming that someone was in the room. He gave us both long looks and said, "Hey, it's okay. Weird things happen here all the time, but it's never harmed anyone." And after checking our doors, making sure we were okay, he excused himself. Sadly, we didn't get much sleep after that, because then my irritated skeptic of a husband accused me of purposefully choosing a haunted hotel when I knew that he didn't believe and hated this kind of crap. Except he didn't deny seeing the man, instead he blamed it on the champagne he now decided to finish at 5 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I was so curious at this point I couldn't really sleep, and I woke up my grumpy husband a few hours later so he wouldn't miss breakfast. The waitress kindly pointed me to a long hallway with pictures from the mansion's past had been collected. I left my husband to enjoy his food and wandered down the hall, looking at the dozens and dozens of old photos. At one point, I found a picture of a judge who had owned the property about 1869. He looked similar to my visitor, but it was hard to say, so I went back to finish my breakfast. Later, when we went to check out, the concierge asked if our night had been okay, if there were any problems since security had reported the incident. Of course, my husband gave me a stink eye, not wanting me to say anything. It hadn't been going until the concierge laughed and pulled out a large leather-bound book from under the counter and said, "We've had so many guests complain of strange things happening that we started keeping a journal. Is there anything you would like to add?" I remember my husband just let out a groan and shook his head, knowing I wouldn't be able to resist. I sweetly asked for a cup of coffee, which I was given, and then sat down at a nearby table and wrote out what he had experienced. Anonymously, of course. That was about 10 years ago, and sadly, nearly 2 years ago, my husband and best friend of 20 years suddenly passed away. I have since moved our children and myself back to our home state. I hadn't thought about that incident in a while, and it makes me miss him. I think about him a lot and wonder how his skeptical belief have changed since now he's on the other side. I know I'll see him again someday, and we'll have to have a very long talk about a lot of things.